holding on the second paragraph, in the middle of the second paragraph, on the third page, page 394. But I think we'll begin again from the beginning of the second paragraph. We asked the question, how can we say, how does the Gemara say, Yafa sho'achas b'tshuva ma'asim tovim b'olam hazeh mikol chai olam haba, that it is greater 1 hour, 1 moment, 1 span of time in this world doing tshuva and mitzvahs than the entire life of the world to come of Gan Eden. When we say that the entire reason, according to the Zohar, the entire reason that we do mitzvahs is so that we should have levushim, we should have garments to allow us to receive the revelation of the world to come. And since the revelation of the world to come is too powerful for a neshama, a nivra, to be able to receive, so a ha'ara of that revelation of the world to come comes down in the mitzvah, and when we do the mitzvah, we get a bit of that revelation, and that acts as garments and filters and a protection, so we should be able to receive the revelation of the world to come. So it comes out from this that really we, in our world of doing Torah mitzvahs, is only a small amount, a ha'ara, in comparison to the great revelation of the world to come. So how did the Chazal say that 1 hour, 1 shah of tshuva, ma'asim tovim in this world is greater than the entire Gan Eden? How can that be? It seems to be a contradiction. So for that, we started the answer yesterday, but we didn't completely resolve the contradiction. So let's go back to the beginning of the answer. Second paragraph, third page, page 394. But the idea behind this is the be'emes and truth. The primary receiving of the reward is not in Gan Eden, rather in the future time in the world of Tchiyas HaMeis. The neshamas begufim dafke, to neshamas in bodies. That's when we receive our true reward, not in Gan Eden. This means Shagili the Gan Eden Urak Ziv Toirosam Bavidosam. The revelation of Gan Eden is only a ray of their Torah and their avoid of the neshamas down here. Dainu Ziva Ara Bilvad. In Gan Eden there's only a ray of what we did. V'loi etzem mitzvah, the very mitzvah itself, we cannot tap into Gan Eden. The ilu ikir schar mitzvah, as opposed to the main schar of the mitzvah. What is the definition of the schar of the mitzvah? So the Chazal say, Shezeu inyan schar ha-mitzvah mitzvah. The Chazal say the reward of the mitzvah is the mitzvah, meaning sheschar ha-mitzvah, the reward of the mitzvah, hi ha-mitzvah atzma. What does it mean the mitzvah itself is its own reward? Dainu etzem ha'or shenim shchayde ha-mitzvah, the very essence of the light that comes through the mitzvah, not the ha'ara. So that schar mitzvah cannot be in Gan Eden, because in Gan Eden it's only ziv toirosam vavidosam, only ha'ara of the mitzvah. The mitzvah itself, which is the true reward, the etzem ha'ara of the mitzvah, will become revealed in the future time to come in this world. That means in the world to come, meaning in Gan Eden, we only derive pleasure and benefit from a ray of a Shechina. Ziv Ara Balvad, it's only the ray, it's not the essence. Why is that so? Because also the world to come, meaning Gan Eden, Nikra B'Shem Olam, it's called Olam Eloshen Helam from the word concealment. V'ilu Gili Ha'atzmus U'Olam Hazeh Dafke, as opposed to the revelation of Hashem's essence, is Dafke in this world. That is why we say Yafeh Sho'achas B'Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim B'Olam Hazeh Mikol Chai Olam Haba, because what we have in this world we have the very essence, and in the entire Gan Eden, as much as you'll pack into Gan Eden, all you have is only a ha'ara. And ha'ara, as powerful as it is, and as great as it is, and as wonderful as it is it has completely no significance to the essence, just like the ray of the sun has no significance and no comparison whatsoever to the sun itself, or my reflection in a mirror, as full and as great and as beautiful as it may be, has no comparison whatsoever to myself, to my very being. That is why we say Yofa Shachas B'Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim Mikol Chai Olam Haba. B'Olam Hazeh Mikol Chai Olam Haba. Now the question is still, but what about the Zohar? What about what we said about Avram Zokin Baba Yamin, that he wasn't missing a single levush, like the Alter Rebbe explains, that the mitzvahs are a garment because they're made from a ray of the light of Gan Eden, and we're putting on the garments of the mitzvahs now, and we're not making sure that not a single garment should be lacking, so that in Gan Eden we should be able to receive that. From that it comes out that what we're doing now is only to be able to receive Gan Eden. And it's only ancillary to Gan Eden. So he says in the brackets, this is where we left off yesterday. So that when Mashiach comes, we should be able to receive the essence of the light that comes down through the mitzvahs that we do. So first it has to go through Gan Eden and to receive that ray that becomes revealed in Gan Eden. And that ray itself is also still too powerful for the neshama. Since the neshama is a created being, is incapable of receiving the revelation of light in Gan Eden, which is a forerunner and an enabler for us to receive the essence in Olam Haba, in Olam Atchiyah, by Tchiyas HaMeisim, only if beforehand Kimaydei Levushei HaMitzvahs, only through the garments of the mitzvahs, and we call Mokim still and all, HaMitzvahs Atzmam, the very essence of the mitzvahs themselves, Hem Gvoyim Yoiser Me'aziv HaNimshach Al Yodem Gan Eden, is greater than the ray that comes down through the mitzvahs in Gan Eden. Because the primary function of the mitzvah is not to enable us to receive the oil in Gan Eden. The primary idea of the mitzvah is the essence that's going to be when Mashiach comes. But Gan Eden is only something that enables us to do so. Based on this whole understanding, now we can get back to what we spoke about, Vayechi Ya'akov. Yaakov is a level, we spoke about Yud Ekev. Yud is going on Atzilus and Chochmah, Atzilus, and the level of the Neshama of Tahiri. And Ekev is going on the lowest levels to the way the Neshama comes down here, the lowest level of the heel. We spoke about different levels of the heel until it comes down to the heel down here in this world. So now we can understand the connection between Vayechi and Yud Ekev. So he says, Valpiza Yuvan Nois Dalad, Yuvan in Vayechi Yaakov, according to this will be understood the idea of that Yaakov lived. Shamitis Inyan Achayim Hu Bi Yaakov. The true idea of life is when you have this Yaakov Yud Ekev. What does the Yud Ekev indicate? Inyan Yeridas HaNeshama Lamata. It's the descent of the Neshama down here below. K'dei Lasik B'Torah Mitzvahs, to be involved in Torah Mitzvahs. Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim, which is what we say that everything is greater. The Tshuva Ma'asim Tovim is greater than even the way the Neshama was above. Only when you have the Yud coming down into the Ekev, that's when you have the main reward, that's the revelation of Hashem's essence. So that's the true life, when one can connect Hashem's essence. So now we're going to get back to the original questions we asked in the Maimer. The first thing we asked, was about enumerating the 17 years. That's obvious, and why is it necessary to point it out? This is also what it says that Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim. 17 years. First of all, that the very fact that he even enumerates it, and we can't understand it on our own, and also why is it necessary to point out how many years he lived in Mitzrayim. In Shar Shnois Chayev, top of the next page, he doesn't include it with the rest of the years of his life, like Avram and Yitzchak and others. He doesn't enumerate. He lived so many years here and he lived so many years there. Rather, the pasuk divides them as a separate thing. The 17 years that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim is like a separate experience completely of Yaakov. Since the true idea of life is only through descending to this world, in this world itself, it is specifically in Mitzrayim where you have the true level of life. Why? Mitzrayim, Golus, Klippa, constriction. So Hachel, Mamitzonim, Vigvulim, the Seder Ishtalshus. It begins with the Mitzrayim from the word constraints, narrowness, confines of the whole Seder Ishtalshus. Shu Inyan Mitzrayim, Malosh Mitzonim, Vigvulim, the Kedusha. This is the Mitzrayim in the holy realms, which is the constrictions and the boundaries in Kedusha itself. So that Mitzrayim is where the true idea of life is. Until the literal Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim the Lumazah, the true idea of life is when we come into Mitzrayim of the other side. Only through refining that which is down below, that there's nothing lower than it. Yaakov becomes the true idea that Yaakov lived in a manner of 17 years. What are the 17 years? So the Baal Turim says, it's the numerical equivalent of good, because when we engage and deal and elevate the Le'umazah, that is the true and good life. Also, what this will be understood, the reason should misper klolus shnei chai Yaakov mavdul makdim es mispar amut. He separate and he prefaces the lower number, that he says first 7 years and then 140 years. First of all, he starts off with the smaller one, instead of doing like says by Avram Avinu 100 years, 70 years, 5 years, or by Yitzchak 100 years and 80 years. And also he just separates the smaller one. So he says, Inyan Hamiut, the idea of a lesser number, that indicates on the descent to influence and affect the refinement of that which is down below. That's primary. Through this specifically comes about the true idea of Viyachi Ya'akov. So that's why he has to put the 7 first, 7 being the lesser number. That shows on a lower descent, because the lowness of the descent brings about the true level of life. Ois Hey, page 4. Page 4 of mine. V'zo gam asher kosev Vayhi yemei Yaakov shnei chayev sheva shonim v'arboim ma'as shonom. It was the days of Yaakov. The years of his life was 7 years, and 40 and 100 years. In this number is hinted the general idea of the service of Hashem. The idea behind this is the idea of the 7 years indicates the avodah with the 7 midas, that one needs to refine them and to change them. Interesting idea. We know shana is from the word meloshin shinui, from the word change. So he says sheva shonim means hainu lishanoisam ulahapchom akdusha. We need to take the 7 emotional attributes, and to do into them, make them into shonim, we need to change them, to transform them to holiness. That's also why the pasuk enumerates and prefaces the 7 years on their own, because the beginning and the core service, avoidus habeinim, which is the service of the beinim. Like it's explained in Tanya, midas kala adam. That's the midah, that's the measure of every person. Who inyan birur v'zichucha midas is the refinement and clarity that's brought to the midas and purity that's brought to the midas. Because otherwise, if a person just does Torah mitzvahs out of habit without working on themselves to reach an ava and yira and so on, so then it's not considered avodah, like the Alter Rebbe explains about Oived Elikim, Lasher Loy Avode, and so on. But the primary focus is on midas for the bein. Like it's explained in a different place. The primary avodah these days is the idea of the emotions. That's the idea of the conquest of the 7 nations. When Yidden went into Eretz Yisrael, they only conquered the 7 nations, Canaani, Chiti, Amori, and so on. Symbolizing the idea of in our own Eretz Yisrael, we need to conquer the 7 emotional attributes. Masha'enkin, avoida, the birur amoichin, avoida kasha, as opposed to the avoida of refining our mind, our intellect. That's a more difficult avoida. Shalav kol moicha savolda. Not every mind, not every brain can handle this. The primary time of refining of the intellect, of the brain, will be when Mashiach comes. And that will be the time when we will also conquer the 3 nations, the Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmoini. That you cannot refine them these days. So even though Avraham Avinu was promised a much greater land, which included Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmoini, we only conquered the 7 nations because that was all we were capable of doing then. But when Mashiach comes, we're going to have the 3 additional nations, indicating also the avodah of the moichin being refined. So therefore, we start off with Sheva Shonim, because our avodah now, the avodah of the Beinani, is the 7 midas, to change it. By day, avodah of Bir Sheva midas Sheva Shonim, through the avodah of refining the 7 emotional traits, the 7 years, boim lar boim ma'as shona, we come from there to 140 years. The Mispar Kuf Mem, who based on Shivim, the number 140 is twice 70. Hainu, this means Shenoisef ala Mispar de Sheva Shonim, in addition to the number of 7 years, Yesh Nagam HaMispar de Shivim. There's also the number of 70. Shemoid al Sheva HaMidas Kivishem Klulim Eser. This indicates the 7 emotional attributes, the way they include in them the 10 spheres, in other words, 7 times 10. That is shu inyan hamshachas hamoichin b'midas. That is the way the intellect already is being drawn down into the emotions, because we know that the emotions have to be influenced by the midas and has to be transformed. The intellect has to transform and guide the midas, and that's what helps transform them. And in this number of 70, based on Shivim, we have twice 70. Sha'oila kuf mem, that comes to the total of 140, as we will explain what the number 140 or what the number twice 70 indicates. The idea behind this is, like the Marash explains, that this year, where the Rebbe said this Maimer in Taf Shin Chav Zayin, that was 100 years since his first year of leading Chassidim. In other words, 100 years prior to that, in Taf Chav Zayin. So he says in the Maimer Vaychi that Shnas Taf Chav Ches. He says in the Maimer Vaychi of the year Taf Chav Ches, 1868. Behegdem Akushya Yedua, to explain this twice 70, by first prefacing the famous question Benegel David, concerning David HaMelech, Sheshnois Chayav Hoya B'Mitzvah Shivim Shana, that David HaMelech lived for 70 years. And it says that David HaMelech was really not supposed to live at all. He had no years of his own. So he had to be gifted years. So the Chazal say, Shemetzinu, we find the Medrash says, She'adam Arishan Nasan Loi Shivim Shana. Adam Arishan gave him 70 years of his own. V'lechein chasru Shivim Shana Mishnoisav Shal Adam Arishan. That's why Adam Arishan was missing 70 years from his life. He lived to 930. Sheroi Hoya Lichias Elf Shan. Adam Arishan should have lived for 1,000 years. Shemnamer, like it says, Kibi Yom Acholcha Manu Mais Tammuz, in the day that you eat from the tree, you will surely die. Yom Mishal Kadosh Baruch Hu Elf Shanim, the day of Hashem is 1,000 years. Shemnamer Ki Elf Shanim Menach Yom Esmon Demer. That 1,000 years in your eyes are like yesterday's day. So therefore, he should have lived for a day, or up until the last moment of the day of 1,000 years. Why did he live only 930 years? So the Medrash Rabbah tells us that Adam Arishan saw with his prophecy that David HaMelech was going to be a bar nafle, he was going to be someone that was going to pass away, so therefore, or not live a life, he would be miscarried, etc. So he gave him 70 years of his life. That's the Medrash. Then there's a Zoyar that says that other people gave David HaMelech 70 years. Similar to this, we find that the Avos gave him 70 years. Avram Avinu gave him 5 years of his. Avram Avinu should have lived 180 years, just like his son Yitzchak, because we said that a son that comes close to his father's age, within the 5 years both ways, he should be concerned about his passing. So from the fact that Yitzchak lived 180 years, that means really Avram Avinu was supposed to live 180 years. He only passed away earlier, so he shouldn't see Esav go out Latar B'Sra. So these 5 extra years that Avram Avinu passed away earlier, that was given away to Adam Arishan. Plus, Ya'akov Nasrallah Chavchet Shanim. Ya'akov gave Adam Arishan 28 years. It was missing from his years that should have been at least the 175, like the years of Avram Avinu, because again, Yitzchak was Yaakov's father, and Yaakov lived 147 years. He was supposed to live at least 175, which is the bare minimum. So therefore, he had 28 years that he gave to David HaMelech. Yosef Nasan Lamed Zayin Shonim, and Yosef gave him another 37 years that were missing from Yosef HaTzadik's years. That was supposed to be, like we said, the son is supposed to live like the father for 147 years. In the end, he lived 110 years. So it's missing 37 years. So you add the 37 plus 28 plus 5, you come to the 70 years of David HaMelech. So the question is, how do we reconcile the Medrash and the Zoyar? The Medrash that says Adam Arishan gave him 70 years, and the Zoyar that said the Avos gave him the 70 years. Since David HaMelech only lived 70 years, he didn't live 140 years. Why did he need twice 70 years? Both the 70 years of Adam Arishan and the 70 years of the Avos. The idea behind this is we said before that the number 70 is 7 times 10. That means we're drawing down the intellect into the emotions. Beis Palmim Shivim, twice 70. These are the two levels in drawing down the intellect into the emotions. This is the idea of the upper mind and the upper view and the lower mind. These are two manners of the vision of the eye. Ayin, in the Hebrew letter, ayin is Mispar Shivim. It's the numerical equivalent of 70. Ayin shalom ma'ila v'ayin shalom ma'ata. There's the eye from above and the eye from below. This is the difference between the 70 years that Adam Arishan gave David HaMelech and the 70 years that the forefathers gave. The 70 years of Adam Arishan, that's the lower approach, the lower view, the what's called Yichud Tata, Bittul Hayesh. This world exists, and we have to be bottled to Hashem. That's the view from below. That's the 70 years of the forefathers. That's the upper view, the eye of above. That's why both Adam Arishan and the forefathers gave David 70 years. And through this, he had not only the intellect that came into his emotions, the level of the lower type of intellectual experience, the experience of seeing the world as an existence, but also the drawing down of the upper mind, the seeing how the true existence of Hashem. Still in all, how many days did he actually live? How many years did he actually live? Was only 70 years. The main idea of David is the sphere of Malchus. Malchus is about the creation of the world, the bringing the Yesh into being. So therefore the main thing is the approach from below, the vision and understanding that the world exists. If so, what purpose and what benefit is the idea of the 70 years of the Avis, the upper view, the higher view? What does it function? It's only the upper view, that's the way it comes down and is enclosed in the lower approach. Not the upper view, the way it's on its own. But the years of Ya'akov were 147 years after his avoid of refining the 7 emotional attributes. He drew down the intellect into the emotions, which is 70 years, in such a manner that also the higher view came down the way it is on its own. In other words, not just the way it's enclosed in the Das Tachten. So there were 2 separate types of moichin coming down into Midas. Therefore he lived another 140 years, based upon Mayin Shana, twice 70 years, in both the lower approach and the higher approach. This matter will be revealed in the future when the resurrection of the dead, now then will be the primary time of receiving rewards. This is what it says, that we will see eye to eye. We will see Hashem. What's the eye to eye? Beis pamim ayin, twice ayin, just like the 140 years of Yaakov. That the vision of the lower eye will be like the vision of the upper eye from Hashem's perspective, that the true existence is only Hashem. In such a way that we will see His face directly. All matters down there below will be as above. It will be speedily through Mashiach.